Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's start our classes. Hi, Arshit. Hi, Pranav. Hi, Shravan.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. How are you all doing? So, last class we had done revision, and before that we were doing socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution, and we didn't finish the chapter, so we will finish it today. Fine. Okay, just let me share my screen. Okay, so we spoke about the liberals. Are you all ready, right? Hello. Okay, so we studied about the liberals, we studied about the radicals and the conservatives. So we'll do a quick revision of what we had done. So liberals, they wanted to bring a big change in the society. They wanted secularism. They opposed the uncontrolled power of the dynastic rulers, and they believed the government should be elected by the people. The government should do what which is good for people, but they believe in universal adult franchise. Means they wanted only good people, good men of good class to join their group, and only one man can vote, and that man should be the person who has a property. So landless people were not given the right to vote, and also they left out women. Fine. While the radicals wanted a nation which government was based on the majority of a country's population, they opposed the privileges of great landowners and wealthy factory owners. Okay, now the conservatives, let's talk about the conservatives. They were the people who supported the monarch. Okay, they were the friends of the monarch and the nobility, and they contended that gradual changes should be brought in. It should the change should not be sudden. Okay, now comes the Russian. Now comes the revolutionary activities in different parts of Europe. Okay, where it happened in French, Italy, Germany, Russia. Liberals and radicals, they all started their movements in all these countries, and their aim was to remove monarch. Okay, now in Europe in the mid 19th, socialism started to attract, and this idea became popular. That was based on the belief that all people are equal. Before that, because of the monarch, under the monarch, this was spread that everybody is not equal. The monarch are the great ones, okay, and the other peasants were the ones who were supposed to be serving them. Okay, so now with the spread of socialism, this belief began to feel that people are equal. Okay, now and that property should be equally distributed in the society, means the landless people begin to dream of being landowners, nor could any individual person hold the entire property. So this belief, or you can say this idea, began to be popular in all over Europe. Okay, now those who followed the idea of socialism were called socialists. Okay, and socialists were the ones who followed the path of socialism, and they were absolutely against private properties. They believed that the root of all the trouble was only private properties. It was the private properties that was because they were the one who were exploiting the peasants. Fine. Okay, now everybody dreamt, right? Everybody dreamt, but there had to be a plan that was to be charted, that will be dotted down. Okay, it should be there in black and white. How do we have this social? How do we implement this socialist movement? Okay, so for this, many people shared their ideas that the socialist society could be run well in the future. So these were philosophers and you say social activists Robert Owen, Louis Blanc, Karl Marx, Frederick Engels. Robert Owen, they started a cooperative community And it was their idea that people will work together and profits will be divided among themselves according to their work. Okay, now they believe that the government should implement cooperative communities, and capitalists should be removed. Only so the support of socialism started. Okay, and the idea of socialism, they began to spread all over the Europe, and many international bodies were started. Some names are international body, second international. Okay, and this all these bodies they supported socialism. Okay, now the formation of associations and parties in different countries began. Now, in Germany, the Social Democratic Party started. In Britain, there was a Labour Party, and in France, there was the Socialist Party. So all these are the parties that followed socialism. Fine, but none of these socialist activities were able to form a government. The government was formed only in the Russian Empire. Okay, now we are going to do a bit of Russian Empire. Anybody has any questions so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we will start with the Russian Empire. So in 1914, Russia was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II and his empire. The Russian Empire included current day Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus. Okay, stretching to the Pacific and comprised today's Central Asian states, as well as Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. The majority of the population was Russian Orthodox Christianity. Okay, now here we see the Russian Empire that is extended a lot far. Okay, in this is the Russian Empire, and different religions were followed in the Russian Empire. There were Protestants, there were Muslims, Buddhists, Catholics. The major religion was Russian Orthodox Christianity. Okay, now also agriculture was the major work of the people in Russia. 85% of the population worked in the agricultural sector. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Russian population was dominated by agriculturalists who used to cultivate for the market as well as for their own needs. St. Petersburg, okay, St. Petersburg and Moscow were prominent industrial areas, but there was not so much of the industry developed. Okay, now craftsmen took much of the production, but large factories existed alongside workshops. In the 1890s, more factories were set up and foreign investment in industry increased. Large factories were supervised by the government to ensure minimum wages and limited hours of work. The workers were a divided social group. They were also divided by their skills. Okay, so the workers were divided in social groups, and also they were divided by their skills. So despite the division, the workers united to stop work when they disagreed. So this was something that was seen only in Russia, not in other countries, where they were so united that if one worker had a problem, all of the workers would stop their work. Okay, so when they disagreed with employers about dismissal or work or conditions, so the peas and now this was the about the workers. Now let's talk about the peasants. The peasants cultivated most of the land, but the nobility, the crown, and the Orthodox Church owned large properties. Now the nobles got the power and the position through their services to the Tsar. Okay, the Tsar was the monarch over there. Okay, now in Russia, peasants wanted the land of the nobles. Okay, they believe that because they are the one who are working hard, so they should have the land. Okay, so there was little industry outside Russian Empire, or the only industrial areas was St. Petersburg and Moscow. St. Petersburg and Moscow. Okay, so In 1914, the industries had developed and many women were employed to work. About 31% of women worked in factories, but they were paid less than the men. So political parties in Russia were legal before in 1914. In 1898, socialists founded the Russian Democratic Workers' Party, Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party, which respected Marx's ideas. Some Russian socialists felt that the Russian peasants' custom of dividing land periodically made them natural socialists. Throughout the 19th century, socialists were active in the countryside and formed the Socialist Revolutionary Party in 1900. The party struggled for peasants' rights and demanded land belonging to nobles to be transferred to peasants. The party was divided over the strategy of the organization. According to Vladimir Lenin, in a repressive society like Tsarist Russia, the party should be disciplined and should control the number and quality of its members. Okay, so they should be, I mean, they only those who are disciplined and those who there should not be unlimited quantity. Only quality members should be there. Okay, so Vladimir Lenin believed that. While the Mensheviks thought that the party should be open to all. It should be open to all men, women, and whether they are landless or whether they are women. Okay, so the Russian society in rural area, some farmers had less land, and many farmers did not even have land. So most of them, the land was held by the nobility and the church. Okay, now the Russian peasants were different from the European peasants. Why? They worked by pooling their land together. Okay, they together worked in all the land and then they distributed the profit. Okay, and then divided the output according to the needs of the individual. Okay. Okay, now in Russia, political parties were illegal, fine, before 1914. So both these parties, the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party and the Socialist Revolutionary Party, both were illegal. Okay, this was formed in 1800 and this was formed in 1900. Okay, this was the Russian Socialist Democratic Party. This worked in the urban areas and they worked for the workers. And while Socialist Revolutionary Party, this worked mainly for the peasants, that was the farmers, and this was active in the rural areas. Okay, now we'll go through the story of how the Russian Revolution happened. Like you see, the workers were not happy, and also the peasants were not happy. And although their party was illegal, they formed two parties, one in the urban area and one in the rural area. Okay, now Russia was an autocracy, and even in the beginning of the 20th century, the Tsar was not subject to parliament. During the revolution of 1905, Russia, along with the Democrats and social revolutionaries, worked with peasants and workers to demand a constitution. So, what is the first thing that anything should happen, that we should have a rule book, right? So they wanted a constitution. So for Russian workers, bad times started from the year 1905 as prices of essential goods rose and their real wages declined by 20%. How did their wages decline? Because the price of essentials, the bread, and you can say the food that rose, that became high. So workers went on strike, demanding a reduction in the working day to 8 hours, okay, an increase in wages. That was the demand, let me say, that was reduction in working out in the working days, means they should have one day a leave, and also the working hours should be reduced to 8 hours, means they work long hours. And also their third demand was they wanted an increase in wages and an improvement in working conditions. Okay, it should be hygienic place to work. The procession was attacked by the police. Okay, now when they protested, they were attacked by the police, and the Cossacks, when it reached the Winter Palace was the place where you can say like a parliament. Okay, the incident took as a bloody Sunday. A question might come in your exams like describe the bloody Sunday, what was the bloody Sunday and what happened on bloody Sunday. They can question the question could be asked in many forms. Okay, so this started a series of events. So it all began from that point, the bloody Sunday. So which resulted in the this bloody Sunday. This resulted in the 1905 revolution. During the 1905 revolution, the Tsar allowed the creation of, because now the monarch, he got under pressure. So he agreed, okay, I will allow the elected consultative parliament or Duma. He said, I will allow. But what happened? He rejected it many times. Okay. After 1905, most committees and union workers unofficially, since they were declared illegal. Okay, so we'll talk about the points here. The Russian, this is, you can say this is the difference here. Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party, this was formed by for workers, worked in the urban areas. This worked as an illegal organization. This was formed by peasants. They worked in the rural area, and this was also an illegal organization. Okay, now the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, this divided into two, the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. So the head of the Bolsheviks was Vladimir Lenin. Remember this name? And the head of the Mensheviks was Julius Martov. The Bolsheviks believed that the party should be disciplined. I mean, everybody should not be allowed, should not be, the gate should not be open to all. There should be some selective and quality people. While the Mensheviks believed that the party should be open to all. I mean, the gate should be open, anybody could come in. Okay, now the Tsar Nicholas too, okay, he was all in power and he was crazy with power. So there was no parliament inside Russian, and this decision, all the decisions that was made in the country was made by Tsar Nicholas. Okay. So like I told you, the prices began to rise, or the prices of food began to rise, and this was due to the war. Okay, now Tsar Nicholas, he went several times into war. Okay, he went into war many times, and each time he lost the war. In spite of that, he went to war again. So what was the result of war? Whenever a war happens, the prices of food goes up. Okay, and also so what happened, like the prices went up, so the workers protested, and the protesting people were attacked. They went to the Winter Palace to protest. Fine, they wanted to ask for high wages. They went to ask for improvement in workplace. They went there to ask for working hours should be limited to 8 hours, and they should have a 1 day leave in the working days. So when they were attacked, okay, the Tsar, he ordered his troops to attack them, and about 100 workers were killed and 300 workers were injured. So this day was called as the Bloody Sunday. This was the beginning point of the revolution. And when the revolution started, Tsar, he came a bit into the pressure, and he allowed the elective parliament, that was the Duma. Now, the first Duma was dismissed in 75 days. Who did it? Tsar Nicholas. He dismissed it. Okay, no, this is not good. Now the second Duma was formed. This was also dismissed. Okay, this all should be changed. It should be, he put some ifs and buts and he dismissed it. Now third Duma was formed. When the third Duma was formed, he was forced to continue it. But what he did, he chose his people, okay, to sit there and vote for him. Because the Tsar made changes in the voting laws. He made changes in the voting laws and kept such people in the Duma who were supporters of the king, like conservatives and liberals and revolutionaries were thrown out of the Duma. They said, "You go out, okay." And now the his friends, you can say his followers, okay, that were the conservatives. They were allowed to sit in the Duma, and they were supposed to be making the laws. So what happened? Okay. So the revolutionaries were that was so the liberals and the revolutionaries were thrown out of the Duma. Let's talk in detail now. The First World War and the Russian Empire. In 1914, a war broke out between two European alliances. That was the German. On one side, we had Germany, Turkey, and Austria, and on the other side, we had France, Britain, and Russia. Okay, and okay. So this was the First World War. The war became popular as it continued. Tsar refused to consult the main parties in the Duma. Support was thin. The First World War was different on the Eastern Front and on the Western Front. Between 1914 and 1916, Russian army lost badly in Germany and Austria. Okay, the Russian army lost, that was in 14 and 16. Okay, now the Russian army destroyed crops and buildings to prevent the enemy from being able to live off the land. The country was cut off from other suppliers of industrial goods by German control of the Baltic Sea. Railway lines began to break down by 1916. For the people in the cities, bread and flour became scarce. By the winter of 1916, droids and bread at bread shops were common. Okay, so this was all what happened into the war. When the war happened, the often if you have if you are aware what is happening in Ukraine, that the war, Russia has broken down, has bombed the bridges. They have bombed the roads so that the troops could not come and go. So it could be controlled. Their movement could be controlled. So this is what happened in then also in the World War One also. So they destroyed crops, they destroyed the road. So everything became chaotic. Okay, and there was no food. Okay, so we have done till here that the roids began. So now at the first at the starting when the war was there, people supported Tsar because they were, and in their support they named Saint Petersburg to Petrograd. Okay, because Saint Petersburg was a German name, so they changed the name. Okay, now they don't want anything German. So later on, as the time went on, people declined their support to Tsar because of there was various reason. Number one, Tsar refused to consult the main parties in the Duma. Okay, he did what he wished. He did not consult anybody. Okay, now Rajputin, that was a monk, was the advisor of the Tsar, and it was this person, and nobody liked him. Okay, nobody liked him. He was very unpopular among the people, and also his wife, that is Tasania Alexandra, she was a German origin. Okay, now you've married a German person. How can you go against war with the Germans? So they smelled something fishy over there, and that was the reason they declined their support to the monarch Tsar Nicholas too. Okay, now like I told you, in 1914 and 1916, the Russian army was badly defeated by the German and the Austrian forces. Okay, and by 1917, 7 million people were dead. 3 million people lost their homes. Crops were destroyed. Buildings were destroyed. Railway lines were broken. The supply of goods had stopped. Many factories were closed, and there was a severe shortage of food. I have written in bullets and it will be easier for you all to remember. So, okay. Now the February Revolution, this what led to the revolution in Petrograd. Petrograd was St. Petersburg. Petrograd city is divided among its people. On the right bank of the river Neva, workers' quarters and factories were located, and on the left bank located fashionable areas such as the Winter Palace and the official buildings. Okay, let us see here. So this was a river Neva. Okay, so here we had the workers where the workers lived and where their factories were there, and on the other side was the Winter Palace and the government buildings and where the nobility and the monarch lived. Okay, the government called out. Okay, now what happened on the yeah. Okay, so on the right bank, a factory was shut down on February 22. Okay, now women also led the way to strike, and it is called International Women's Day. The government imposed a curfew as the fashionable quarters and official buildings were surrounded by workers. Now all they went from their from the right bank, they went to the left bank, okay, because their work had shut down and they were hungry. Fine. So and but when they came, what happened? The government imposed a curfew. Okay. Now Duma was suspended in 25th February. This was happened in 22. They shut down the factory, and on 25th, Duma was also suspended. The streets thronged with demonstrators. So people were hungry, and their work was also done. So the street was filled up with the demonstrators. They were raising slogans about bread, wages, and they wanted better hours, and they wanted democracy. The government called out to the cavalry. Cavalry was the military, you can say the army, but they refused and they asked them to fire on the demonstrators, but they refused to fire on the demonstrators because they also supported the demonstrators. So the soldiers and striking workers, they also gathered together to form a Soviet or council in the same building where the Duma met. So, and it is termed as the Petrograd Soviet. Now, the Soviet leaders and the Duma leaders formed a provisional government to run the country. Russia's future would be decided by a constituent assembly elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage. Petrograd led the February Revolution, which brought down the monarch in February 1917. So, this is how the monarch was brought down. Anybody has any questions so far? Anything that you don't understand, I will repeat again. Pranav? Hi, Pranav, you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So after February, under the provisional government, army officials, landowners, industrialists were influential. Now the monarch had gone. Okay, now what happened? The army officials, landowners, and industrialists, they became influential. The liberals and socialists worked towards an elected government. Restrictions on public meetings and associations were removed. Okay. Now the parties that was illegal, they became legal. In April 1917, Bolsheviks leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile. Lenin demanded three things termed as April thesis. He wanted war to end. Okay. This is one. He wanted the war to end. Okay. And land to be transferred to the peasants. Okay, this is his part 2. Land to be transferred. Okay, transferred to the peasants, and the banks to be nationalized. Okay, this was his third demand. This is the April thesis. Okay, just remember that. He also emphasized renaming the Bolsheviks party to the Communist Party. Now the Bolsheviks party, they became to be known as the Communist Party. Now the workers' movement spread throughout the summer. Factory committees formed, trade unions grew in numbers. When the provisional government saw its power reduce and Bolsheviks' influence grew, they decided to take stern measures against the spreading discontent. In the countryside, the peasants and their socialist revolutionary leaders pressed for a redistribution of land. Encouraged by the socialist revolutionary, peasants seized lands between July and September 1917. Okay. So the revolution of the October 1917, the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks grew. On 16th October 1917, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. To organize the seizure, a military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet under Leon Trotsky. The Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters to seize government offices and arrest ministers. By the nightfall, the city was under the committee's control and the ministers had surrendered. At a meeting of the All-Russian Congress of Soviets in Petrograd, the majority approved the Bolsheviks' action. Okay, yeah. The Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet Union. The military revolutionary committee was formed under Leon Trotsky. Okay, now what happened? Oh, where is it? Okay, now what happened? The industry and the banks were nationalized in November 17. Okay, and which meant that the government took over ownership and management. Now lands were declared as social property. The means there was landowners. There were no landowners. The government owned all the lands. Land was declared as social property, and peasants were allowed to seize the land of the nobility. The Bolshevik Party was renamed the Russian Communist Party, Bolsheviks. Okay, now elections were conducted in November 1917. Okay, to the Constituent Assembly. But what happened? The main twist comes here. Okay, what happened? They failed in the majority. Okay, they lost the election, although they had done everything. Okay, in January 1918, the assembly rejected Bolsheviks' measures, and Lenin dismissed the assembly. Okay, and when he lost, what happened? He dismissed the assembly. Okay, now the Bolsheviks made peace with the Germany at Brest-Litovsk. The Bolsheviks participated in the elections in the All-Russian Congress of Soviets, which became the parliament of the country. Now Russia became one party state. Okay, now after 17, this led to experiments in the arts and architecture, but many became disillusioned because of the censorship of the party encouraged. Okay, let us do a quick review here. Okay. Now, military men, they were loyal to the government. They seized the building of the Bolshevist newspaper. The MRC confiscated, like I told you, they confiscated all government offices and all arrested ministers, and most of them, they surrendered. Okay, now there was an election between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks. Okay, and so what all the Bolsheviks did, most banks were nationalized, most industries were nationalized, lands were declared social property, peasants were allowed to snatch the land of the nobility. To show the change, new uniforms were designed for the army and officials after clothing competitions. That was Soviet hat was introduced. Okay, in November 1970, the Bolsheviks conducted elections to the Constituent Assembly, but they failed to gain majority. Okay, so what they did, Lenin, he dismissed the assembly itself, and now this was a one-party country. In March 19, Bolsheviks made peace with Germany at Brest-Litovsk, and now now Russia became a one-party state. Fine, because the people did not elect him, so there is going to be no election. Okay. Now we'll talk about the civil war. I think it's time. We'll continue to civil war the next time. It's a big
Yes.
chapter. Anybody has any questions so far?
No,
The
ma'am.
Russian Revolution is very interesting. It is a very interesting story, and many people, even Jawaharlal Nehru and also Rabindranath Tagore, they were influenced by the Russian Revolution, and many of its Constituent Assembly points were taken by us also. That we that was influenced by the Russian Revolution. And if there's anything to say, anything to add? Nothing.
Ma'am, can you send the notes of this chapter?
I will also send you notes, and also today I made a PDF with important questions. So it has some short questions, it has some long questions also. If you will go through the notes and if you will go through the question and answers, I think you will be thorough with the chapter. Okay. I'll send it to you. I will send it on WhatsApp, and also if you want, I will share it on if it, because it's a big file, it might not be able to upload on WhatsApp. So I will anyway, I will send it on WhatsApp. So and in next class, I will finish this chapter, and also I will discuss important question and answers. Fine. And somebody please send me your half-yearly syllabus. Uh, Anybody, Sampath, please, will you send it to me? Send me your half-yearly syllabus.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Bye then. Good night.
Bye, ma'am.